Welcome to an all-new episode of Get Lit with Lianna, the podcast. Join me as I sit down with a new guest author in each episode to discuss their books, careers, and everything in between. It's always extra incredible when I get to connect with people on this podcast who I share a fundamental similarity with. And when I heard about Amy Lee, I knew I needed to have her on this podcast. She's a first-time author. She's Canadian, and her book, Set on You, is on shelves everywhere right now. So if you're listening to this, I hope you read the book. But if you have not yet read it, I strongly encourage you go pick it up now because it's seriously one of the best books I've read this year. Amy's book does not shy away from tough subjects, from the power of social media to body acceptance to imposter syndrome to finding true love. It really just hits all of the nails on the head. And it's such a funny story. It's timely, it's swoony, it's moving. It'll make you laugh. It'll make you cry. It'll make you think. It'll make you reevaluate how you use social media and how maybe you interact with people online. So this was a really, really incredible episode to record. And I'm so happy that I had the chance to sit down with Amy. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts. So leave a comment on my Instagram or slide into my DMs because I would love to hear what you thought about this conversation. But enough chit chat. I know you're really here to hear from Amy and not from me. So here we go. My conversation with the brilliant and very sweet Amy Lee starts right now. Welcome, Amy, to the podcast. I am so thrilled you're here. I was just saying to you before we started to record how much I loved the book and how I felt that I couldn't read it fast enough, but I also wanted to read it slow, but I was on a time crunch because we were doing this. So I feel like I got the full experience, but crammed in, because if I was reading it just for leisure, I probably would have taken more time with the extremely steamy scenes, because this is the steamiest book I've read in 2022. I don't know if people have told you that yet, but I'm here to declare.
That's the best compliment I've ever had.
No, oh my God. It's actually this. We're going to get into the steam because I was DMing you bathtub emojis because I was severely unwell reading this book. If you don't know what the bathroom emoji means, or the bathtub emoji rather means, pause this, read the book, then come back, because you don't know until you know. But I'm so happy to have you here. Can't believe you're Canadian. This entire time I thought you were from Toronto, but you're from Ottawa, which is even cooler because I don't really know that many people from Ottawa, but Ottawa is really close to Montreal, my hometown. So I've visited Ottawa so many times before. I don't know how many romance authors actually have come out of Anglophone romance authors, I should say, have come out of Ottawa. So this could be a Get Lit with Lianna first and only. It's possible. It's really possible. But I need to know more about you. So before we start about talking about this book, tell me everything that you want to tell me about you and your life and your career and how you got to this point.
Great. I will just dive right in.
Dive in.
I'm Amy Lee. I'm a Canadian author of the rom-com series, starting with Set on You, which features a trio of Chinese American social media influencers.
I didn't know it was a trio. And I didn't know that they all are social media influencers. I had heard that the second book is about Crystal's sister, who's a bookstagrammer. But yes. I didn't know that there were three. And I have so many questions about the bookstagram of it all. But okay, continue. That's incredible. I didn't know.
Yes. So yes, this is my debut. I'm 30. I work for the government of Canada, which is why I live in Ottawa, the capital. And that's my day job. That's my 9 to 5, a very kind of government bureaucratic, policy-oriented job. And so diving into the creative side of things with romance and with books is such a fun outlet for me. So,
oh my gosh, I didn't even know that you worked for the government of Canada. I'm learning so much right now.
I do. Yes, that's my day job.
So this is a series of 3.
It is, yes. They're all technically standalone. So you can read them on their own without having read one of the other ones, but they are, connected within the same world with the same characters from other books.
That's incredible. So when you set out to become an author, were you one of those kids that read like a fiend and was always book in their hand? Or was this kind of in the pandemic, you had some downtime and you were let's try that? I'm so curious about how this type of writing, I guess, came to be.
Yes. So I have been writing fiction since I could write with crayon. I used to steal my parents' computer paper out of the printer and do my own doodles and kind of copy children's books that I was reading at the time.
Aw.
So my writing has always been kind of in line with what I was reading. And so as I kind of got a little bit older, when I became a preteen, I would sit at my family desktop in the basement and like secretly write angsty teenage love triangle romances.
I love that. Yeah.
I always loved writing, but I think even more so, I was just a huge reader. I was always reading books. And unfortunately, when I became of university age, my creative life in general kind of just flatlined because, when you go to university, you're just inundated with textbooks and, learning and then socializing, and you just, lose the time for anything fun. And so that's what happened to me. I kind of stopped reading altogether and definitely stopped writing. And it was only until, I guess, after I graduated from grad school, that I started picking up books again when I was, on lunch break or commuting. And I kind of found romance. I mean, I'd always been interested in romance, but I never, a lot of people have cute stories where like their mom or their grandma was into bodice rippers and stuff, but I never really had that. I was always reading like dystopian novels, but flipping just for the romance. So I always was a romance reader.
Right. But like hidden. You didn't really know that you were a romance.
I didn't know that I was. Exactly. Right. And so when I started reading romance and kind of found the contemporary side, I went into a Chapters Indigo, which is the Barnes and Noble here in Canada. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing Laura Jean on the cover of To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han, which is a YA, a young adult. And I remember stopping and staring at it because I was like, oh, that's an Asian girl on the cover. I've never seen that before. Mm-hmm. Or I mean, if I had noticed it. And so, until then, I kind of just assumed that main character status was reserved for white characters. Mm-hmm. And it just never occurred to me. And so then I picked the book up, read it, loved it. And I just kind of figured from then on that there was something really special about the romance genre. And so I picked up more and more books, Christina Lauren, all sorts of those contemporary ones. And it just reignited my love for the genre. And they gave me such an escape, and they just made me so happy. The world was really difficult, 2016-ish, and they just kind of gave me a light. And so I realized that I hadn't written in so long, and I had this gnawing urge that reading these stories was kind of giving me inspiration. So one day I just opened up the blank Word document, and just went for it.
Crazy. So around what year did you start writing Set on You, if you remember?
So I started writing again. I think it was late 2015, 2016. And I had actually written 2 books before Set on You. So Set on You, it's my first published novel, but not the first novel that I wrote.
Okay.
So those first 2 books, about 2016, 2017, they were bad. Like they were terrible. I'll be the first to admit they were terrible.
I love when authors tell me about like their first like attempts at writing a book, and they're always right out the gate. Everyone, I've not yet come across somebody who's been like, it was amazing, I'm so mad it didn't get published. They're always like, it's garbage, don't look for it, I will never read it to you, it's trash. Like everyone,
it's gone. Never ever going to see the light of day.
So
I didn't think that the second one was that bad, so I queried it to literary agents, and literary agents have to sell your book to the big 5 publishers. And I queried, I would say like 50 plus agents, and I got 50 plus rejections. It was just rejected all across the board. And I kind of just figured, maybe I just don't have what it takes. And so while I was kind of wallowing in that rejection kind of, pool, I just kind of got the inspiration for Set on You. And this was late 2019.
Okay.
So that's when I started writing it.
Wild. And then you queried with that title and you found an agent. And what was that like when you went on sub? Like, tell me all of that.
Yeah. So I guess I'll go back to the inspiration for or when I got kind of the light bulb for it.
Yeah.
I was in a spin class, sweating and dying, hanging onto the bike for dear life, wanting to fall off of it. And I just kind of was looking around the gym thinking, wouldn't this be the coolest place for like a rom-com, and just with all of the competition and stuff like that, wouldn't it just be a great place for enemies to lovers? And so that's kind of where the initial spark came from.
Yeah.
And so when I started writing it, it was actually the first book that I wrote with an Asian character, because my first two books were white characters. And
That's really interesting.
Yeah. And I don't know why I did it. I think it's just, again, because it hadn't occurred to me that I could write somebody that looked like me and that people would want to read that.
Okay.
And so I think coming to, I guess, the realization that I was writing a character that looked like me, Crystal was really beginning to form in my head. I think it just kind of gave me a lot more of a spark that the other books didn't have when I was writing them. And so I
also was probably so much more authentic to you and your voice, because you were writing somebody that could be you, right?
100%. Yeah. It came so much easier. And I think there was just a lot more passion behind the words. And so when I say that because I wrote it really fast. It was probably the fastest book that I wrote.
Wow.
And I thought at the time, like, oh, maybe I just write really fast. No, that's not the case. It just happened to be the case with that book. So I ended up querying that one to agents in May 2020. So right after the pandemic hit. And that querying experience for literary agents was very different from the last one. I queried a batch of 10 just right off the bat. And I ended up getting 3 offers of rep within the first 3 days, which was,
oh my God,
so separate from the first time of just getting all rejections. So I was very floored, very surprised. And I ended up signing with my current agent now. And we went on sub to publishing houses. I think it was end of May 2020.
Wow. So it happened quick. Yeah.
It happened very fast. Yes. And then the submission process, she sent it out to, all the main romance imprints. And we ended up signing with Berkeley. I think the call that I got when she told me that they had offered was early August 2020. So it was about 2.5 months that I was languishing on submission, which isn't a super long time, but it's, you hear stories where people sell them overnight. So I kind of had hoped that would be me, but it wasn't. And that summer was hard because the pandemic had hit. Everyone was inside. There was a lot going on.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine, but it's still insane because given like all of the Canadian romance writers that I know of, like there's really not that many. And it seems that like you, along with a few others, have like really managed to like break through that glass ceiling, if you will. So it's incredible that like you're a Canadian romance writer and you are writing a book for a major US publishing house. Like it's incredible that now you're going to get your name out there amongst so many more readers that unfortunately just like would not be possible if you were only working with a little Canadian publishing house. Like it's amazing that you and so many other Canadians are able to do that, because I feel like that wasn't the case years ago. Like I remember growing up and like all of these romance writers, even like as reading YA, like being 15, 16, reading like YA romancy stuff. Like, I don't think I knew of any Canadian authors. And now I'm reading romance heavily along with some YA. And I'm learning of so many people. So it's incredible that you're all able to do this and that your voices are being heard, your stories are being shared. Like, I'm so happy for you guys. And like, I'm just the need to be the biggest champion of these stories because there's not enough of us.
Thank you so much. And Canadian authors, there's a small pool, but it's so fun to meet other Canadians. I don't know why. Sure. There's just something special about it.
Well, there's just like an understanding, like and I feel like Americans can't relate because like there's so many Americans, but like especially when you're like Canadian in a niche market.
Yes.
It's just nice to see other like friendly Canadians.
Absolutely.
Before we go any further, I would love if you could give everybody listening your take on the elevator pitch of Set on You.
An elevator. Ooh, okay. This is a challenge. Okay. So Set on You is an enemies to lovers romantic comedy featuring the main character, Crystal, who is a Asian curvy fitness influencer. So a fitstagrammer, I guess you could call her. She's a big advocate for inclusivity in the fitness world. And she very reluctantly falls for her Chris Evans lookalike, CrossFit loving gym nemesis after finding out that their widowed grandparents are getting married.
So crazy. The part about the grandparents like got me because I was just not expecting that. Like, I don't know if it's in the synopsis. I think I must have like skipped over it because I did not realize that was going to be the tie-in. So when they realized like that connection, I was laughing out loud. I was like, this is perfect because I couldn't figure out what the importance was of like her grandmother's relationship. But I loved that aspect of the story. But before we go even more into the things that I loved, because there was a lot that I loved when I first opened the book. I mean, I read it on my Kobo, but when I first still figuratively opened the book, there's a disclaimer, like a few pages long. You wrote this like personal note to all of the readers, basically as like almost like a trigger warning, I guess, about what some of the themes in the book are and why it was important for you to write this book and talk about these themes honestly. So why was it important for you to have that little note at the beginning of the book? Because I've read many books that touch upon touchy things or subjects that maybe are more sensitive to other readers. And normally it's at the back of the book, but this was right there. You cannot miss it. So why was that? What was the intention behind that?
I think because Set on You is being marketed as a rom-com, and it is a rom-com. But I think that with the boom of rom-com lately, people have very different expectations or varying expectations, I should say, about what a rom-com should be. Like a lot of people are looking for escape. A lot of people want, a pure, fun, easy, laugh out loud book. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's great. I love books like that. And if I want to read a book like that, I'm hoping that I'm not going to get blindsided by, something that might trigger me or something that might make me really sad. And so for me, it was important for me to put that disclaimer up front so that if somebody were to be triggered by some of the content, or if they just weren't looking for a book that dealt with some, more serious issues, that they could, put it aside for another time and, that they weren't blindsided by it, I guess.
Yeah, I love that you had it just like right there at the beginning so that there were no surprises. And it's way more helpful to have something like that at the beginning of a book than the end of the book. So I don't know whether you had to push for that or if it was your publisher that was like, this is where it's going to go, or your editor, but like kudos to whoever made that executive decision, because I think all readers will really appreciate that. And I think that everyone needs to go into this book with an open mind, because I'm a curvier girl and I've read so many romances that have like plus size leads. And I always take umbrage with some aspect of these books because there's just always some part of it that is like either fetishized or romanticized or like not real. And I need to tell you that like there was not one part of this book that pulled me out of the story, that made me think about how this isn't realistic, or like I just really felt Crystal on like a deeper level. Like I really got her. And like I'm not somebody that goes to the gym frequently. Like, to be honest, like it's funny you mentioned spinning. When I started dating my boyfriend, he he still is, but a huge spinner. And it was like a major thing for him that I go to him to Soul Cycle. And I was adamant about not going, and he'll listen to this and laugh his ass off that I'm sharing the story. But it was like nearly a breaking point at the beginning part of our relationship, because it was something that he adored doing. He did it all the time. And he was like, I want to be able to share this with you. And I was on the other side, so self-conscious, not a big workout person, knowing that I wouldn't be able to keep up, and being like, can we do something else together? Like, why does it have to be this? Why is working out like the thing that needs to be the activity that we share? And I eventually got bullied. I will say that it was bullied. I was bullied into going, and I fell in love with it. And now I am a Pelotoner. I mean, I haven't really been doing it as of recently, but I am totally into it. And like, not for a physical reason. It's honestly purely for like my mental health and my well-being. Like I just feel so much better now when I exercise. So I just loved the messaging behind and the intention behind Crystal's character. I need to know like how you came up with Crystal and her personality and like the intention behind her, everything about her. I would love to know more about.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, I'm so happy that you now love spinning. That's so fun. I'm not a big gym person either.
Yeah.
At all.
Shocking.
Which was fun to write Crystal.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say like, I'm not like, I wasn't that big of a gym person, but like I started going and I love it. Like I thought you were going to tell me like you're a squat queen. I would be like, okay.
So honestly, my relationship with the gym has been on and off my whole life. Okay. And I think, there are some times, or there have been some periods in my life where I'm going all the time and I'm loving it. And then there's some times where I'm just not now, or I guess I should say like the past 2.5 years has been a no.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where I've followed fitness influencers on Instagram since fitness influencing became a thing, kind of when I was in university. So I'd say 2010. And it's been such an up and down roller coaster seeing these people on Instagram. I remember I was following a bunch of them at one point, and it was all I could see was just ripped abs, amazing bodies. And it begins to take a toll on you because you sort of start to think, is this how everybody looks? And I don't at all look like that. And in Asian culture, being curvy or plus size is a totally different standard even than Western culture, and it's tough. And I think like I said, I kind of had the inspo for this gym setting, and that came before Crystal appeared in my mind. Okay. And so when I kind of realized that it was going to be a gym rom-com, Crystal's character came after. And I guess I'm always drawn to strong characters in romance and in rom-coms. And I thought it would be so interesting to capture a character that defies the norms as a curvy, kind of mid-sized Fitstagrammer, personal trainer, and someone who doesn't work out with the mindset of losing weight, but with the view that, health and wellness is about more than weight. It's about, your mental health and all these other things that are so pertinent to how you feel on a day-to-day basis. And so Crystal is a character who's very nuanced. She's, an idol in the body positive fitness community. And despite the privilege that she has with being, a fit person and mid-size, she still has her moments of doubt because the community has just such sky high standards for bodies. Right. Like I said, you're always just seeing personal trainers who have such an ideal look. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to write a book that would show readers that, it's okay not to feel 100% confident at all times, because I think that sometimes the body positivity community goes, I guess, not to an extreme, I would say, because I think body positivity is a great thing. I think it's more just, sometimes it's like, love yourself, you're beautiful as is. And sometimes that's just not reality. Sometimes you just don't feel that way. Yeah. And, I wanted to get across the message that the onus isn't all on her to love herself all the time, because society doesn't love all bodies equally, whether that's ethnicity, whether that's weight, whether it's disability or anything. Society just doesn't see those bodies equally. And so how can you expect yourself to love yourself no matter what, if you're not seeing that reflected in the world around you? And so I wanted some space for that nuance, and to write a book that affirms that, everybody deserves their own love story, no matter what they look like, and that, there's room for all sorts of confidence levels.
For sure. I think my favorite part of the book and all of these nuances, exactly what you said, is the emphasis on body acceptance rather than body positivity, because I do think that the term body positivity, and I say this very emphatically, and I have a lot of I'm very passionate about this, that body positivity, you don't need to love yourself every single day and every single minute of every single day and every moment. You're allowed to be flawed. You're allowed to have a bad day. You're allowed to feel yucko. You're allowed to feel ugly. You're allowed to feel like you don't want to work out. You're allowed to feel like you want to eat a chocolate bar. You're allowed to feel like you want to eat a bagel. I think body positivity puts too much emphasis on trying to be perfect, but also pretending to try to be perfect to please yourself, where body acceptance is more just feeling what you want to feel and accepting that, and just raising your hands and surrendering to that, and just acknowledging that you are the way you are, and there's really not much more you can do about it, and just to take care of yourself. So I really love that not only is it intertwined throughout the story and Crystal's journey and how she manages her own mental health and how she views herself, but it's also in those Instagram posts, which are some of the best parts of the book. And normally I'm somebody that really doesn't love when there's little letters or stories within a story, because I find it, again, it will pull me out of the main story. But these Instagram captions and blog posts were absolutely incredible. I really just needed to tell you that I feel like you need to start a second page besides your Bookstagram book author page, and be a motivational speaker for me, because I literally was screenshotting my Kobo, taking pictures with my phone on my Kobo, being I need to remember this. This was so well said. This is for me. So I just need to thank you for including those little Instagram post captions, because not only did they, I'm sure, resonate with the fictional people within the book, but me as an actual reader reading, I really, really resonated with them and felt them. And more than any other book that I've read that has a plus size or curvy or however you want to call it, like heroine. So Crystal really was something special for me. And like, she's really like tattooed on my heart. Like, I'm not going to forget her and like all of the messaging that you created that came from her. So I just had to let you know and tell you that.
Thank you so much. That means so much.
No, my pleasure. It was really a special part of the book. But another part of the book that I really loved is how you tackled the topic of imposter syndrome. And like, it's a through line of the book for sure, but you really only called it its name at one part of the story. And I'm somebody like, I'm 28 years old. I'm navigating my career, my relationship, like my whole life, and especially after COVID, like my whole life is in disarray. Like everything's just up in the air. I don't know where's up, where's down. Like things are just moving at a mile a minute. And I really feel imposter syndrome symptoms in my everyday life. They manifest themselves in the weirdest ways. But why was that important for you to also include in this book? Like, I know they kind of go hand in hand, but for you to point blank, like, show a light on imposter syndrome and even call it by its name was really, really cool to me.
Yeah, I think that imposter syndrome is something that affects so many people, including me. And I think that that's part of the reason that I included it, because at the time I was feeling major imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I had just come off of hardcore rejections, 50 plus of my previous book. Crazy. And so as I was writing this book, I was like, oh my God, like, should I even be bothering to write this? And so it was almost kind of like a message to myself that you do deserve to be doing this. Keep going. And I think that it's interesting. And I think that Crystal does say this. Well, I guess I say it in the book, that imposter syndrome tends to, I guess, affect people, especially women, and especially super successful women. And because I think that a lot of people who aren't very self-aware don't have imposter syndrome because it doesn't occur to them that they don't deserve what they have. But I think that with women, it often does get to us, especially women who are, very, I don't know how to describe it. I guess they're doing a lot of thinking about, themselves and where they are in life and stuff. And I think it's just something that really, really hits home for a lot of, like I said, women and millennial women in particular.
Mm-hmm. Another part of the book that also goes back into what affects women. And I think it's not only women, is like the power of social media and like hate comments. And obviously men and every type of gender, everyone can get form of hate comments. But I feel like, especially when it's critiquing a woman's body, that's like another level of pain. And
totally,
the main like catalyst in this book, obviously, is when Crystal shares a photo that goes viral of her and her boyfriend, and people just start immediately attacking her body and berating her and basically trying to tell her that she doesn't deserve to have such like a standard looking hot boyfriend, like however you want to say it, because of the way she looks. So when you were outlining this book, did you always know that was going to be the turning point? That was going to be the part where everything kind of fall apart for her?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. That came pretty quickly after I decided, or after her character came to me. So okay. I guess not from the very beginning, but when I was beginning to think about her and how a character like her, would go through a journey, that was 100% the arc. Right. That I considered for her.
And it's like so interesting. Obviously, this book is very social media heavy because that's her job. But like the arc that she goes on as a social media personality, like putting so much weight on what she posts online. And then it was just very interesting to me how like social media ended up being the thing that kind of took her down and like ended up breaking up a really, really critical relationship for her. I find that a lot of these contemporary romances we read, sure, there's mentions of social media, but it never plays like a full character. And it feels like in this book, like the Instagram of it all was like another person in their relationship. It was another character. So did you ever think of it like that when you were writing it, as if it was like another person in this relationship almost?
No, but I love that. I'm going to use that. No, that's amazing. I think social media is such a beast, and I think I have been, luckily. So I started on Bookstagram a couple years ago, and I assumed that like, just being on the internet, you would just get hate, tons of hate. Luckily, I never got any hate on Bookstagram because Bookstagram is actually such a positive community overall.
Yes.
But I'm a huge like celebrity watcher. Like I love celebs.
Same.
And as you could probably tell by the pop culture references.
Yeah.
And I always see celebrities go through this of just constant body shaming. Even like Selena Gomez, she's gorgeous, it's so like ideal looking, but yet she gets so body shamed. And I think it's, one early critiquer of this book had said, I don't understand, if Crystal's a social media influencer, why she would get so impacted by what happens to her at the end if, she's always dealing with hate. And it's kind of like every celebrity who goes through, body shaming and bullying online will tell you, yes, you get this all the time. And yes, it's normal, but there are some comments that seep through and they just get you down. And even if it's something that you've heard before, it could catch you on an off day and just totally derail your mental health at the time. And so it's something that I think that really affects people, and not just celebrities and social media icons, but regular people.
For sure.
And I think especially now with younger generations, I should say, growing up with social media. Yeah. Like, I think for us, I remember Facebook came out when I was in 10th grade, I want to say. And I never had to deal with, measuring myself in likes when I was really young like that. And I think that really only came out when I was in university. And so I think by the time you're university age, yes, it impacts you, but it's not, going to tear down your psyche as much as it would if you're 13 in middle school. I can't even imagine that. And so that's kind of another thing I had in mind, is that regular people deal with this all the time and measuring themselves up to other people. And I think it's just something that unfortunately is going to be a big thing as social media continues to prevail in society. And
for sure. But I really loved how you were able to like show the double-edged sword of social media in a way that like I've not seen in a romance book. And like you made it in such a relatable way. Like even if you were not a plus size person, like you can understand how embarrassed and sad and hurt she must have felt to wake up to comments like that. Like she definitely wasn't expecting it. And some may argue she should have been expecting it, but like, no, like it takes nothing to be nice to people. Like it takes more effort to be mean.
Absolutely.
So that just really riled me up, but I really wanted to ask you about the importance of the social media aspect of it, because it was a critical part to the story. But now onto the happier, funner, lighter things of the story, because you did an incredible job at all of those tougher stuff, but we cannot not address the romance and the steam of this book, because it is a rom-com. I know we haven't really talked about the com parts yet, or really the rom parts yet, but they're heavy. They're heavy in there. So the steam of this book, first of all, girlfriend, were you like, when you were writing this book, were you like, this is how many steamy scenes I'm going to include, and this is what they're going to be, and this is how they're going to play out? Like, I need to know like the outlining process of them, because first of all, there were scenes where there was like things happening in public. Then there was things happening in private. Like you just literally like no holds bars. Like you went for it in every sense. So like, I need to know what the outlining was like. I'm so curious, because it was just it was the steamiest book I've read this year for sure yet.
Oh, I love that. That's the best compliment. Like I said, I love steam in books. Love it. And I guess for me, when it comes to outlining and figuring out, steam level, I never set out to write it steamy. And I think it really just, I guess it depends on the characters. Like I'm the type of writer who my characters, I have an idea of what I want them to be and what I want them to do in kind of my original outline. And sometimes when I write them, they kind of just do what they want. So an example of that would be Scott. I wanted him originally to be this like super alpha kind of guy. And then he ended up being a lot softer.
Yeah, he's a cinnamon roll.
Yeah, totally is. Yeah. And he wasn't supposed to be. So he just kind of did that on his own. But when it comes to the steam, it's really just how how I'm thinking the characters are together and what they would actually be like and how their chemistry kind of evolves as I begin to write it. And so for them, I kind of just felt like they would be super spicy.
They were the spiciest. And like, I don't want to give like too much away, but like they were like adventurous in their spiciness. Like it's not like typical spice that you read in like an everyday romance where like, you know what's going to happen. Like it was just like an eye-opening romance steam experience. It was so good. It was just different. That's also what it was. It was just different. And it was unexpected in so many different ways. But when you were writing it, well, I always ask authors this that like write steamy scenes, like tell me what the editing process was like. Cause I know the second pass is always like an interesting experience.
Oh yeah. Okay. So a lot of times it's funny that you say this because I actually write my steamy scenes in the same go. So all of the scenes, usually I've written them all at the same time, like same day or the same couple days. For example, I'll say like, I'm taking 2 days to write all my steamy scenes or the first draft. So they're bad, but they're there. The words
That's
are there.
Crazy. Okay.
And I do it because I need to, you know, with steamy scenes, they're very like, it's not sexy when you write it because they're so logistical. Like you've got to make sure body parts are where they need to be.
Right. That's what I've heard.
So much involved. And so I got to be in like that frame of mind. It's like writing a fight scene, I imagine. Not that I've written a fight scene, but like a war scene, a battle scene. Right. I imagine it's similar.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I write them all at the same time. And they're very, very logistical.
That's what I've heard from a lot of people that I've spoken to. They've all said that like the choreography behind a sex scene is what makes a sex scene not sexy. Because you're literally spending so much time being like, okay, but his leg is there and now her hand is there. But then wait, where's her head? Oh, wait, but then where's his hand? And it's like a lot of like trying to picture it. But I've heard funny stories of people like either trying to like record an audio book of their sex scenes or people like with their editor and their editor being like, I don't know if someone would do that and like circling.
Oh yeah. So, I've had a copy editor say, but so his part was here and now he's here. Like, how did that even happen?
They were really picturing it in their head.
It's like, thanks for catching that. Cause I never would have.
That's amazing.
I think with steamy scenes too, it's not just the body parts, but then I also kind of layer in the emotional aspect as well. So for me, my first kind of pass is let's just get the movements down. And then it's like, let's add what's going on internally. Because I think that's such a huge part of steamy scenes is that, you know, mental part. So that's kind of something that comes in the second pass.
Right. Oh God, they were so steamy and so good. Like everyone reading this book, I'm sure your DMs once the book is out will be flooded of people like sending you bathtub emojis on like if there was a locker emoji, like people will be so unwell. They're so steamy. But on top of the steam, exactly like what you just said, like the emotional level and the emotional connection between Crystal and Scott is very much there. And Scott, as we just said, is the ooeyest, gooeyest cinnamon roll hero, which is so interesting to me because I often don't find a cinnamon roll hero and an enemies to lovers because normally like they're both mean to each other. I'm like not ooey gooey. And like, I just found that Scott's meanness was like so hot, but it wasn't even like you find out that it's not even actually that he was mean. So I just need to tell you that like you write incredibly gooey men. And I loved the romance part of it. What was your favorite scene to write that was like uber romantic? Like if you asked me now to think back about on it, like them in the fire truck was like one of the most romantic scenes ever that I've like definitely read this year, but like maybe ever. Like I will not forget the fire truck scene. But what was for you writing? What was your favorite?
Okay, so I'll have two parts to this.
Okay.
So the romance part will come next, but I think my favorite scenes overall with them were 100% the gym scenes in the beginning. That was the most fun I had writing them when they're in their, you know, dabbing and sparring, banter. That was super fun for me. I think my favorite romance scene to write would be when she goes to his apartment and they're watching The Lord of the Rings.
So good.
And she peels the clementine for him. Yeah, that's my favorite. And that's actually something that my husband does for me because I don't like the pulp and the pith.
Me too. Clementines. But nobody peels them for me. I have to tell my boyfriend needs to start peeling. But I was eating one yesterday and I fully thought of them as I was peeling peeling it for myself, getting all the white pulp and it's getting under my fingernails. Now my hands smell like orange for 4 days.
Oh yeah, it's disgusting. Like,
yeah,
they got to sell them without them and just like perfectly peeled.
I wish.
That would be lovely.
Let's make that invention. We can make money here.
Make a business after this.
Yeah, we'll sell it to Loblaws and IGA and Sobeys. We'll make a killing. But yeah, no, I love all of those scenes. Like just the romance aspect was so well matched with the steam. Like it doesn't feel, you don't feel like you're reading like, I don't know. You get the romance aspect and the steam aspect, and it just balances out so well. And that's when you know you have like a very good romance on your hands because you just got the best of all the worlds, you know?
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. I really loved it. So now tell me, I know you're working on another book, but before you even tell me about your next book, have you ever considered, and I don't know if people have asked you this, but I've been thinking about it since last night when I finished. Have you ever considered writing any part of this book from Scott's point of view?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So dual POV is so huge in romance. People love it. And I love reading it.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because I toyed with the idea of doing a dual point of view, having some chapters, like half chapters from Scott.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first started writing the book, at the time, my favorite books were all single point of view. Okay. And I liked them because I find they add kind of like that layer of mystery with the hero where you don't know really what's going on in his head. It kind of adds tension. And I loved that. And so that was my original intent. And then I think the reason that I continued on the single point of view was because I realized it was really Crystal's story and it was mostly her journey. So it's a very heroine centric journey. I figured having his point of view wouldn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And also, to be honest, I kind of fear writing from a male point of view. I don't know why. I
can't imagine. Yeah.
Some people do it so well. Like Abby Jimenez, she does it so well. And I'm like, oh, will I make too many dick references? I don't know. Will it sound good? I have no idea. So I have thought about writing, a chapter or two from his perspective, but you never know.
The thought, I mean, I had this thought yesterday, but sitting behind you, if people are watching, they'll see that The Love Hypothesis is one of the books on your bookshelf. And I loved when Allie gave that bonus chapter from Adam's point of view, even though it was just like the 1-2 chapters, like it's just cool to get into the other person in the relationship's head. But I fully agree that this is totally Crystal's story. And you couldn't have written this story if it was a dual point of view, because so much of it is her personal journey. And obviously like her coming to terms with her job and her life and her accepting her body the way it is. And so anyway, of course it needed to be that one singular POV, but if you ever came into if you ever came to think that, oh, maybe like, I'd be the first person in line to read whatever, send it to me. If you need a beta reader for it, like I'm all for it. Like I'm here for you. But okay.
100% keep that in mind.
Thank you. But now before we wrap up, because I've used so much of your time, I need to know what you're working on. I know you're doing like Tara's story as a bookstagrammer, which I'm obsessed with because like, obviously we're both bookstagrammers, which is wild, but like, I imagine it's going to be a bit like softer in terms of like the personal journey she goes on, just because Bookstagram, as you said, is like such a nice, happy corner of the internet. And like people aren't so mean in either of our comments or DMs, I hope. So what's going on with Tara? Like, tell me everything about her story, like what the next book is. And then if you can say what the third book is, but you probably can't.
Yes, I think both of those things. My publisher wanted me to wait and really, really push, the second one after this one comes out. So I can say a little bit though.
Okay.
So Tara, like we know, is Crystal's sister, and she's a book influencer. She's on Bookstagram, Book Talk. I imagine she's like a super successful kind of romance bookstagrammer. Which I just love. She's very, very, as a character, romance obsessed. She, wants to have a trope-worthy romance. She unfortunately got out of a bad relationship. She had her wedding canceled, which is why her grandma got the wedding.
Too good of a storyline. It's so funny.
And, she's devastated in Set on You over that. She's in the dressing room, like covered in her dress, just like, kind of crying over it.
Yeah.
And so honestly, she as a character is my favorite of the three girls. Don't tell Crystal and Nell, but she's my favorite. I don't know that she's most like me, but for some reason her perspective just came out so much faster and just so much easier, even though her book was very difficult to write. And so social media doesn't play as strong of a role, not nearly as strong of a role as it does in Set on You.
Right.
It's definitely a softer story, and her bookstagram, book influencer role does definitely play a part, but it's more the romance aspect of that.
Love that.
And
that sounds like it was made for me.
Yes.
In particular.
The one hint that I will give is that, as we know in book one, and it's not really a spoiler, Grandma Flo and Martin kind of have their second chance romance. So they are, they used to date when they were in elementary school, and then they get together as senior citizens. And so they have their second chance romance. And Tara is very inspired by that. And she would like to have her second chance.
You're killing me. You're killing me. You're killing me.
Oh, and it comes out right now. It's slated for January. So I would assume that the advanced copies will come out sometime in the summer.
That's so crazy. So soon.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, updates often change, but that's what it is for now.
That's awesome. No, oh my God. I can't believe I don't have to wait that long. And then number 3, do you have any plans for that? Is that one written yet, or what's the stitch?
It is written.
Okay.
It is written. That is Mel's book. So she is the fashion makeup kind of influencer.
Love her. Yes.
So she would be, I guess, of all of them, she'd probably have the largest following, I would imagine, kind of the most successful, because I think fashion and beauty is probably one of the biggest industries for influencers. And the hint that I will give is that her book takes place in Canada, which is interesting.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. I can't wait. And then are you working on things that are not within this world? Like, is that what you're writing now? Are you even writing now? I don't even know what you're up to now.
So I just recently finished the third book.
Okay.
I handed it into my editor. I think it was a couple weeks early. And because I had written the second and the third kind of back to back, I'm sort of just a little burnt out. So
I'm sure.
A little bit of a break. I've got ideas percolating, but
Amazing.
nothing specific that I've started.
No, well, you're doing the most. You literally are grinding out these 3. I can't wait. I mean, I knew that Tara's book was coming, but I didn't realize that this was like a trilogy or like in the same world. So that's amazing. I have so much to look forward to now. I'm so happy. I cannot wait. Okay. Well, I think that that's really it. Thank you so much for coming on this podcast with me. I had the best time talking to you. Like, you just were everything that I was hoping you would be and more. And you wrote like just such an important book and such a great story. And these characters are so like, they're going to start such great conversations, I hope, online and offline with women and people in general, honestly. And we just needed a story that was more than just a love story. And you really, really gave that with this one. So I thank you. As a career girl, I really appreciate it. Like, this is just, I know that it's just going to stimulate great conversations, and that's what we need.
Thank you. That means so much to me. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
My pleasure. It was such a treat. I'm so happy we got to do this.